Supreme Court today has struck down electoral bond scheme altogether. In a landmark decision, electoral bonds has now been deemed unconstitutional and invalid. The court directed SBI to cease issuing electoral bonds with immediate effect. Election Commission of India is expected to receive comprehensive data from SBI within 3 weeks' time. In fact, the ECI will now have to publish the details of all the anonymous donations that have come in since 2019 to now. Once the information is collected, ECI to publish this within the next month. By first week of March, names have to be out. Bonds that haven't been encashed will be returned to donors. The ruling was delivered by a 5-judge bench, constitutional bench, led by Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, putting an end to contentious method of political funding that has been under scrutiny since its inception. Supreme Court has underscored that it violates the right of voters, right to information, and also fundamental rights of voters to know the candidate.
The Supreme Court has struck down the electoral bond scheme, comprehensively struck it down, and all the provisions that were made to bring it into effect in the Income Tax Act, in the Companies Act, etc., everything has been struck down. They have held that this violates the fundamental right to information of citizens to know about who is contributing this much money to political parties, etc. They have also struck down the amendment made which allowed unlimited political contribution being made by companies to political parties. They have also directed the State Bank of India to furnish complete information about who purchased the bonds, who encashed the bonds. And all this information will have to be submitted to the Election Commission, who will have to display it on a public website so that the people come to know who purchased the bonds and who contributed by way of electoral bonds to which political party.
It's a huge ray of hope for citizens of this country, because everybody knew that the BJP was in power and that any donations through electoral bond scheme would come to the BJP. But the interesting part is that this electoral bond scheme had nothing to do with elections. Now, with 5,000 to 6,000 crores in your kitty, which is not to be used in elections at all, right? You can topple governments, you can build your infrastructure as a political party, and there's no accountability. So I think to that extent, it's something that's significant has happened in terms of the future of our country, because funding should be done in such a way that it does not skew the free and fairness of the election.
I would see this as a historic judgment, not only because it is unanimous, because it is so rare that when a government invests political capital in any economic measure, that the courts strike it down. The last time it happened was possibly 50 years ago in the bank nationalization cases. This is a significant judgment which will have its place in constitutional history and will be studied for at least a couple of generations in the future. I think this is a historic day. The Supreme Court has basically said that big money cannot influence our democracy.
ये मोदी सरकार का जो है वो चुनाव के प्रति पारदर्शी चुनाव हो, सरल हो, सुलभ हो और हर मतदाता अपने मताधिकार का इस्तेमाल कर सके, इस संकल्प के साथ उसी तरह से राजनीतिक पार्टियों की फंडिंग भी पारदर्शी होनी चाहिए। इस दिशा में कदम उठाया गया था, लेकिन अब इसमें निर्णय जो हुआ वो सरकार उसको देखेगी। जहां तक इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड का सवाल है, जो फंडिंग है उसमें पारदर्शिता हो, पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज की फंडिंग चोरी चोरी चुप्पे चुप्पे जो ब्लैक मनी की जो है वो बाढ़ आई हुई थी, उसमें पारदर्शिता हो सके, इस दृष्टि से सरकार का फैसला था।
We think it's a very good judgment which will have a seminal importance in at least beginning to clean up the system of this legal route for corruption. And the fact that this has come with a government that claims to be anti-corrupt, they have amassed their wealth. But the point is, if this money that has been collected, let us see the exposure when it comes in March, and then we will know what has been the quid pro quo that the government has been doing with these corporates. and what are the deal making that went into it. So all that will be exposed, and I think that is good for the country and for our democracy.
All right. Now, of course, for political parties, the Supreme Court has given them a couple of options right now. All the electoral bonds, first of all, have been discontinued with immediate effect. SBI has also been asked to provide all details of all the electoral bonds from 2019 to now. And that information will be published by the Election Commission of India in a few weeks' time. But here are some of the options before the government after Supreme Court strikes down electoral bond scheme. Number one, accept the verdict and comply with it. Number two, file a review petition with the Supreme Court. And number three, bring ordinance and nullify the verdict. All right. So what exactly will be a choice that the government will take here? Will they be able to bring an ordinance and nullify the verdict? Well, remains to be seen. Or will they comply with the verdict? It's huge, considering that there was a lot of talk by the NDA members, the ruling party, that this is the best way to curb black money, that money has been, that anyone wanting to fund political parties, it can be done through transparent means and methods, though it hasn't really panned out to be so. Many donations came in through anonymous people, where still there's no clarity on who are large chunks of money that came in from anonymous people. Who are they? What is their background? What kind of channels that they've paid that money to political parties? All of that needs to be out and published. That's what the Supreme Court says. A lot of influence that these donors can use or wield on the elections, that they can have huge control on the elections, considering that their name is not out anywhere, and they could pull off, they could really influence elections itself. And Indian elections is known to be one of the largest in the world, considering the size and population of our country. And Supreme Court saying that these kind of anonymous donations that have come in all through the years in the name of political funding is basically an absolute violation of the fundamental rights of voters.